Welcome to Stretch Mufflers. And the press conference, Dynamite Espectaculares.
It's the transition, isn't it? It's the move from that Stretch Mufflers straight into what we think of as Lacey voice. It just feels unnerving how easily you do it.
Wait until you hear my death metal song.
I am looking forward to it.
Oh,
I have
God.
something for later, but I have it now.
Yes.
As always, we have said, there.
Yeah.
It's right at some point.
Right here.
And Taylor.
Hello.
And
Yeah. Actually, can we scissor here?
Hang on. I'm just...
Yeah. Scissor me, Taylor.
Not the worst thing I've done.
So, after All Out, as is tradition, there was a press conference. And nothing ever happens that's noteworthy from a press conference.
I think the easiest way to sum this up is CM Punk decided to hit the self-destruct button in spectacular fashion.
Just for a slight bit of like historical reference on this as well, because you boys know I stayed up and I watched the pay-per-view live, and I looked at the clock afterwards and I thought, I reckon I could probably get about an hour and a half kit before I go to work. And I'm going to do that. But what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to go out and have a cigarette. And while I was out having a cigarette, I thought I will put on YouTube what is there to watch. So I loaded up the media scrum as it started to happen live. So I also experienced this live as well, unless we say no sleep was had before work on that day.
So I know that he basically slagged off Colt Cabana, the Bucks, Omega, them being EVPs, Hangman Adam Page, I think the company as well. So give us the rundown. You watched. What happened?
It was very strange because there was a long gap. Like I was watching it through Denise Salcedo's stream. She was there sort of doing questions as part of one of the journalists. And there was a really long kind of opening bit where it was just a freeze frame. And when we cut to the media scrum, it has started. And at the time, I was a little bit unsure. It felt like a question had been asked to CM Punk that he'd taken offense to. And I worked under that idea for a few days. But ultimately, it seems to be that maybe a question wasn't asked and he'd just come in all guns blazing. But he started off and he was asking about who were friends with Scott Colton, which is Colt Cabana, Scotty Goldman's real name, which I didn't know. I thought Scott Goldman was his real name. But and he was leaning into the fact that maybe some of the people who were journalists, so-called journalists, and he really did go at the journalists, might be using their friendship with a wrestler to push forward certain agendas and at the expense of CM Punk. But as it turns out, the reporter he questioned as to whether he was friends just said, no, I've never met him. Which Punk did actually quite funnily kind of go, well, that's ruined my story then, hasn't it? But it was clearly he had a message he wanted to get across. So he started to talk about the history between him and Colt Cabana and the lawsuit that happened post Punk leaving and what happened with the podcast that they did with what he did with Cabana and I would say at this stage, some of the nastiness that happened. But the key point, and you could tell he was angry, you could tell he had something to say, but at this point, it very much seemed key that what he was trying to say is, everyone, shut the fuck up about this. A long time has passed, and I never want to speak about this ever, ever again. Full
but
stop.
I will keep talking about it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, his full stop didn't last very long. And he came back to it, and he came back to it very, very quickly, and then went into great detail about the history of the case, including talking about some things that he said was not public knowledge, but talking about how Colt Cabana shares a bank account with his mother. And it was things like this that come out in Discovery, the lawsuit, and then started to kind of pan Colt Cabana as a human being that he didn't like, hasn't liked. But I guess this is where it takes a turn to the real point of the message. He makes it quite clear that he doesn't give a fuck where Colt Cabana works, what Colt Cabana does, where he eats, where he sleeps. So you get this feeling that he's trying to make this point that suggestions that possibly he'd had something to do with Colt Cabana being fired, which he wasn't, might have been unfair. Now, at this point, watching this live, I'm sitting there and thinking, oh, this doesn't feel like a part of the story. Tony Khan was sat there and he didn't jump in and stop any of this. And I thought, oh, blimey, this is, again, one of the reasons why I didn't go to bed, because I thought there's something happening here and I don't want to switch this off just yet. But I must admit, I felt like we'd hit the crest of the wave here. And I felt like we were going to go on with a press conference.
Little did you know it was about to get a whole lot. Because this is the thing that blows my mind. Tony Khan was sat there. He could have interjected at any point, which makes me wonder, was Tony giving Punk the rope?
There was a couple of small points where Tony jumped in to almost apologise, is what it felt like to me, of saying he should have. Apparently, he did a no comment when he'd been asked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I got the feeling from this is that maybe Punk had said something to him behind the scenes about you shouldn't have no commented that. But Tony Khan was very clear of going, I was wrong, I shouldn't have no commented. And Punk even said, no, like, you know, you wasn't to know. And then he kind of lent into, you shouldn't have even been being asked this question. This is not your fault.
Yeah. And that is where it turns on the Bucks and Omega and Hangman, because as we know, who feeds Uncle Dave all the stories and puts out their agenda.
Whoa. You say, as we know, do we know? And I think that's
strongly suspect.
But you know, I think we need to be at least a lot of this. It will be kind of what we think, but I think unless we're there when they're getting fed those stories, I think that is because I think it's part of the story, isn't it? I think there is an assumption, and it may well be true. However, it also may not be true.
But yeah, and as I said, it's come out that it's there. All this story that Punk's the problem. Punk did this. Punk got Colt binned off, and Punk was just having none of it. Yet, I think my favourite bit is the fact that he took no shits while he was still eating cake all the way through.
And advertising that bakery that he got it from. I can't remember because so much was said. I can't remember what that bakery was called.
It was Millie's or something.
Very nice, apparently.
Yeah. But then when him ribbing on Hangman for what Hangman did when he shot his off the cuff promo.
What was the remark that's pissed him off with Hangman? Because to be honest, that build was kind of, on Hangman's part, was kind of forgettable.
In theory, and again, I guess this is the theory, is that I don't think it was supposed to touch on any of that. And in the promo, there was a lean into, there was a hint that he may have not had positive impacts for some of the people in the back. And I think it was more about talking about workers' rights, but you don't believe in workers' rights, you believe in your own rights or something akin to that. And then there was the line about, I'm not here to, because it was the build up to the world title match, I'm not here to beat CM Punk, I'm here to save AEW from CM Punk. And it clearly got under his skin, but I think it was that kind of unscripted, but not only unscripted, but not approved lean into some stuff that Punk after this clearly wasn't happy about. But yeah, I mean, at the time in the build, I didn't really. I thought, okay, you know, like he's having a bit of a jibe at him to try and get a bit more heat on the match. I didn't feel like it was egregiously crossing the line. Although I guess if the true intent was to almost suggest that someone had cost someone their job when they hadn't, I could see why offence might be taken.
Yeah, and Punk obviously jumping on the bit about how Hangman doesn't think he needs to take advice from veterans, including someone as legendary as Terry Funk.
Yeah.
That to me just makes Hangman look like a dick. If you're not willing to even take advice or listen to people that have been there, done it, and built wrestling companies and in the past, if you still want to do your weird catapult clothesline as a finish and they say it's not a good move, that's one thing.
You're not the most. You're not.
It's not a good move.
You're not the most objective reporter in the world, Chris, are you?
No, but I think it's
But this is
trying
the thing.
to be
It's
fair.
like
I think he's right.
We've not been told what advice it was that Funk was giving him, but he just basically shot down the idea of even listening to anybody else and that he knows best.
I'm going to go with allegedly.
No, he came out with it in his own press conference. He did an interview where Hangman said, "I will not take advice from anyone. I don't need to, and I don't need to take advice from someone even like Terry Funk."
Yeah,
he said that.
But like Terry Funk, they're wrestlers, Chris. They're actors. That's what they do. They act. They create characters, and in press conferences, and we'll get to this, potentially sometimes they're acting. And unless I see Terry Funk go up to me and say, "Oh, do you know what, mate? You could do this," and him going, "Fuck off, Terry, you're shit." I'm going to go with like you can't just 100% accept this stuff as truth and fact. And I think there has to be some objectivity in a story about stuff that's often made up.
I'll let you have that, but still, the words did come out of his mouth. It's not like it's where he said that he doesn't need to take advice.
Yeah, but you know what? He might actually believe that as well, because it might be true. As I say, we're going to get into we're going to get into this of kind of what's true, what's fake, and all this sort of thing. But also, he may believe he doesn't need advice from Terry Funk.
Because let's travel back to. Sorry, I know we do this, but I'm going to do it. Let's travel back to say the new generation, and there was a certain superstar that was top of the card, high as fuck. Probably wouldn't have taken advice from anybody, any veteran anyway, because he thought he was better. So he wouldn't, like I say, Hangman not taking advice wouldn't be the first. I think it would be foolish if he didn't, because if people are there offering you advice, you take it. You don't have to act on it, but there's no harm in listening to it.
And I think the specific example of Terry Funk is someone I think most people would take advice from, because whether you like ultimately how his style ended up being, the man had a tremendous career over many years and worked many different styles during that. So he seems like a dream person to be coming along and giving you advice, especially if you're doing a kind of cowboy gimmick as well, because a lot of the time he lent into that. But so yeah, it would be foolish. But yes, sometimes the stuff they say isn't real.
And then we also have the fun of Punk saying that the EVPs couldn't even manage a target, which I just thought that was genius that will come put down. And then
I did think they underestimated how hard it probably is to run a retail store. I think there's a bit mean to all retail managers out there. I'm sure it's a very hard and challenging job for some people.
And then off Punk goes with his what's left of his box of cakes and his belt.
Before we go off, I just wanted to say about the Hangman Page bit. And like I said, I was like, oh, there's something going on here. I need to watch this. And the thing that kind of pushed it over to the edge where I went, oh my God, I'm not going to bed is, and I've got it here because what did I ever do in this world to get to deserve an empty-headed fucking dumb fuck like Hangman Adam Page to go out on national television and fucking go into business for himself? And at that point I went, ooh, you don't normally get this. And I know they do a few swearsies in AEW on the show, But that was delivered with such passion and venom that I thought, yeah, I'm not switching off. And as you say, then he goes into leaning into and having a pop at, and I think one of the things that he doesn't do is he doesn't name them individually like he did Hangman Page, does he? But he makes it very clear who he's talking about when he refers to the EVPs. And Tony does try to step in at this point and does try to say, "Oh, I should have," and Punk goes, "No, this is nothing to do with you. These guys should have known what they were doing," and again then talks about people going into business with themselves and potentially trying to elevate themselves at the expense of others, I guess, and by doing sneaky, underhanded things such as passing stories to so-called fucking journalists, as he had called them in a press conference earlier.
So off he pops.
You say off he pops, and sorry to interrupt, but I know so much more is going to happen. There's a few more bits from the media scrum, and I know it will get lost. Am I all right to just kind of cover a little
go,
bit?
go.
I was going to definitely pick up on at least the next two that come out.
Well, because I almost did think as well, from a media scrum perspective, follow that. And I'm not going to say anyone quite got to that level, but there was some follow that. But one of the things that was kind of key is before he went off, he said, "Anyone who has a fucking problem with me in the back, come and find me in the back. Let's fucking go." So that was kind of his parting kind of, come at me away from here. And then he went off, didn't he? But yeah, follow that. Tony Storm did a much subtler attempt at following that, but it was a feisty media scrum because she was asked about winning the interim title, and she spoke about Thunder Rosa, and she said, "Well, Thunder Rosa couldn't fight me because she's injured," and then added the keyword "okay" afterwards. But it was done in a tone that sounded very much like Thunder Rosa's injured. Bullshit. and it was very, again, I'm going, blimey, have they? And at this point, I almost went, I was always thinking, have all this lot been told to build up excitement for things to come? You say what you want tonight and you push it. Because I'd never heard Tony Storm ever do anything like that before. And it seemed out of character. And the only other one I wanted to pick up on, because I know there's a bit where Tony Khan talks about the WWE, that I found that actually quite bland. Swerve in Our Glory do a brilliant. Their one is not a shoot or anything like this. Their one was just a brilliant media scrum promo. Their one
is in character.
And again, is leaning into what we said in our review about how they leaned into being heels that night. They lean heavily into being heels, especially Swerve. And you feel like Keith Lee is gradually coming along. But there's a fantastic moment where a reporter says, "Should you have called an audible on the night, Tony?" And that's the one bit where they looked a bit annoyed because, again, they're not supposed to say stuff like that. But they're doing it in front of the people who just won the match. And Swerve goes into great length about how people keep talking about how the Acclaimed are fantastic and what a fantastic match. And he says, it's funny how teams keep having fantastic matches. What's the common denominator here? Us. And then Tony says, wouldn't it be great to run this back at Arthur Ashe? And he quite clearly goes, no, it wouldn't. We beat them. Why would they get another title shot? And it was what I think the media scrum should be, which is an ability to storyline, push these things on, and maybe it feel that little bit realer in the characters. So yeah, I think we kind of went from apoplectic, scorched earth Punk to bitter and having a pop Tony Storm to actually a great media scrum promo. So we really did get the whole kit and caboodle in it. It was quite a sight to behold, and I think I will probably watch media scrums forevermore, but I don't think we'll ever get one like this ever again.
I don't think you're getting another media scrum anytime soon.
Yeah. Obviously Jericho came out and self-flagellated himself for 10 minutes, but Jericho be Jericho. But yeah, this is the thing. these either need to be one of two things. They should either be where people go real and we get the punkisms and the storms isms, or we have them in character and we get, you know, the wonderful work of art that was Keith and Swerve.
Yeah.
Um,
There's probably something though, isn't there? Like we have not so much on here because we've only really done AEW and we've only been doing this for a while, but I think a lot of frustration with a lot of WWE product for so long was that scripted promo. And you know, it was so far from what we used to get in the Attitude Era, which I think we liked. And I think this is probably an example of one too far the other way, but where you probably need those controls. And we had it with the Kingston and the Sammy Guevara fight recently, where there was a suspension based off the back of it of going unscripted feels fine, but it does feel like they might need to have a few more conversations before they go out and do it to probably with each other clear what they're going to say and kind of go, you know, like I don't want to give it word for word because I want it to kind of come from the heart. But these are the subject matters. Yeah, these are the subject matters I'm going to touch on. Do you have a problem with any of them? And so that would probably be advisable, maybe for AEW going forward.
Yeah, set some ground rules, some boundaries, because otherwise, this is where feelings get hurt. And let's face it, these people have big egos, and you get moments like this. Punk is notorious for being difficult.
Let's call it as it is. He's a cunt. But he's our cunt, so we don't mind him being a cunt.
There's a professionalism part to it as well, isn't there? Because one of the things that Punk touches on is he says that Page going into business with himself potentially could have cost them their first $1 million house. And I don't know whether he's specifically suggesting that he was so annoyed he might have walked. But whatever he was suggesting, so he was kind of going, we need to be professional. This wasn't professional, and he'd already had the bit where he called him out on Dynamite, didn't he? Yeah. And I think that I didn't like, and I thought that was petulant, but that felt like that should have been it and over to me.
That's straight out of Sean's playbook.
Yeah.
From back in the day, because was it the Undertaker he called out with? Well, Sunny Days. He called the Undertaker out when the Undertaker wasn't there. I mean, that probably takes bigger balls than Hangman, but because Taker's Taker. But that's that kind of thing level we're at. That sort of going Sean style almost. That's what I can equate it to, because he was when it comes to wrestling. Well, actually, I don't know. Prima donnas, you don't get bigger than 90s era Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
It wasn't just cocaine, probably knowing him.
And you know, you said there, Chris, that he's our cunt. He wasn't for me on that night. And don't get me wrong, he fascinates me when he says this. And I think we talked about the best heels and the best villains in comic books, and we've done a comic book podcast, is people who've got a point. And I think he had some really good points, and I think he was right to feel aggrieved about some of this. He wasn't my Punk on this night. This was fascinating to watch, but this was a step too far for me, and I didn't like it. And
I think
misplaced.
I think Punk reaches a certain point where he does not give a shit what he says, and I think he'd hit that point, and he really let the barrels fly on that one.
And I mean, the fact that he was doing it to sort of EVPs, the founders of the company, probably gave it a little bit more impact. But this was giving no shits about the company that he's in, that is paying him. And I think for me, there was at this stage, and this is before we hear anything else that happened, because I just kind of had this.
Yes, there's more. There's more.
I felt a little bit of a tear, like a bit of a heartbreak. So I'm going, I said Scorched Earth earlier, this felt like someone burning this shit down. And I was sitting there going, I don't know whether they can come back from this. Not necessarily as a whole, but I thought someone's not going to be here soon. And I think it's going to be you, Punk. And the heartbreak come from, I remember when he came back and the kind of joy that he had in that first press conference, the first media scrum, in fact, and some subsequent ones. And I went, oh, brilliant. Like, this company is the company I thought it was, because this is where people have found their love for wrestling again. And then I got this, and yeah, it was a hard thing to experience and to hear. And now I will shut up because other stuff happens and it gets worse. Yeah.
Oh yes, it does. Go
So
on.
this is all as much as come out because
So
there's
far.
not been, the perpetrators haven't said what's happened, but the Bucks and Kenny go into CM Punk's changing room, locker room, dressing room, whatever you want to call it, and start kicking off. Ace Steel's missus is in there looking after Larry. So Ace Steel goes in, kicking off. Ace Steel apparently has bit Kenny and lobbed a chair at Matt. Punches have been thrown. Christopher Daniels, who is talent relations,
Yeah.
I think so,
and a couple of other execs.
Pat Buck was with him as well.
And there was another one as well.
Tozawa was there as well.
Oh, well, Nakazawa, yeah, and Brandon Cutler. I imagine he was spraying him down as whatever was going on was going on, and Nakazawa was lubing himself up just in case he needed to get involved.
We're all in there, and everyone's been suspended.
Not just suspended, stripped of titles. This isn't interim. This is stripped.
Yeah, I was about to do that.
So, sorry to steal your thunder,
I
but
know.
It was odd though, wasn't it? Because again, over the years of wrestling, we have heard many stories about stuff that's happened backstage, and it's not necessarily confirmed. And we've heard lots of times about fracas and things like that. So
Psycho Sid and Scissors.
And I hadn't, as I say, I hadn't gone to bed, but I did think that was it at the end of the media scrum. So I had a shower, I walked to work, and of course, when I on my walk to work, I thought, oh, I'll log on to Twitter just to see what kind of the world is saying about the media scrum and the event and all this sort of thing. And I logged on to Twitter, and then these stories started to come out. And of course, we're sort of so indoctrinated to these rumours that you think, oh, blimey, if this has really happened, this is really bad. But it probably didn't happen. It's probably exaggeration. And then, of course, you start to, as the day goes on, hear about possible suspensions. Then you hear about suspensions. And then you fast forward a couple of days to they're not on the show and they've been stripped of titles. And you think, oh, my God, something really, really, really did happen here, didn't it? This is way beyond a work at this point, isn't it? Some bad stuff went down.
So, yeah, so not just stripped of belts and suspended, taken out of all of advertising and everything. They're out
Cut
of the
from the
intro
opening
videos.
Yeah.
Be quite interested to see what they do with the video game cover, as two of them are on it. It obviously we can only go on what has been reported. Obviously, no one who was involved in it has actually come out and said what really happened.
So in theory, everyone who is in and around it has been suspended. You mentioned Christopher Daniels and Pat Buck, but everything that has been somewhat reported seems to suggest that the confrontation was primarily between let's say the Elite and Punk and Steel, and other people might have been there ultimately maybe trying to calm it down and break it up, but it's been a blanket suspension for everyone who was there. And I can only guess that that's because in lieu of a full investigation, of which my understanding is there is criminal investigations.
But it's being handled by an outside company for AEW, and there is also some rumors that I did see, obviously not confirmed. There may be a police investigation of an assault,
which makes sense.
And I think kind of when you look at it, the blanket suspension of all also seems to make sense in lieu of having video evidence or someone investigating it and saying it is where there's probably going to be a lot of he said, she said, or he said, in this case. I think treating them all the same does seem like the right way to do it. However, I think if you are maybe the more innocent of the parties, whoever that may be, if there is anyone who's innocent, I wonder how you react to that, because you might kind of go, why am I getting suspended? I mean, if I'm Christopher Daniels and I was just trying to break it up, I think I'd be like, why am I getting suspended? But
I think it's just the corporate approach of, right,
yeah,
we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
You're all, it's literally
All
go
done.
to your
Yeah.
rooms,
Yeah.
go to your rooms. We're running an investigation, and then what shakes out, and then we will deal with what needs to be dealt with there. The other thing is, because this involves Omega and the Bucks, who are EVPs, this is really serious for them.
Yeah.
Because if they're found to be at fault, they aren't just going to get suspended from the show. That corporate side of the things will not put up with that kind of behavior whatsoever. You know, so this isn't the Fed. You can't get
No.
away with paying your mistresses off for 40 years probably.
Yeah.
You know, they will have to nip that in the book, because right now it's bad.
Yeah.
Public perception is bad, because at the end of the day, step outside of it as wrestling fans, but when it comes to business, you do not fuck with the money. You do not make the money angry, and you have risks making the money angry. They will shut that shit down.
In kind of that, like what's been reported, and I know some of this is again rumor, but there seems to be some strong reporting around some of this stuff. I think a couple of the bits that stood out for me is initially reports were that possibly the instigators were the Bucks and Kenny, and they had taken Punk up on his offer to come and see them, and there was talk about a door being kicked in, and that's
To
where the
be fair,
confrontation starts.
if you're going to confront Punk,
Yeah.
take 3 of you, because we may mock him for his MMA career,
Yeah, I wouldn't.
but
fight
I'm
him.
guessing, I get the feeling he knows how to handle himself.
And initial reports seem to suggest that maybe a punch was thrown first, then Punk threw back, then Ace still got involved because he was concerned about his wife, who was in the room, who had a broken leg, and he was worried about her safety. However, subsequently, and this is the thing where there are multiple sides to these stories, is then there seemed to be a retraction on a door was kicked in, and it was said that that was used metaphorically, and that no door was kicked in, and that Punk threw the first punch, and that Ace still possibly overreacted. So God, yeah, I can see why they want an independent to try and unpick this. But one of the big things is Punk is injured. Punk come out of that main event, and Punk needs surgery. Punk
Again.
would not, and will not. And the rumor is that it would be 8 months till he returned, probably anyway. So it's a bit of a strange one, because, and going back to All Out, we come out of All Out, and I think we were very positive, as we said in our review, that we were heading towards Punk MJF, and that hopefully the MJF title win against Punk. But the truth of it is we probably wouldn't have got there. And what comes next for all of these people, if there are firings, contract let goes, or anything like that, Punk isn't going to be available from anyway. And I think we've already got a grumpy Punk and a Punk who is going to be out. I do wonder whether we ever see Punk again in a wrestling ring, certainly AEW.
From AEW's standpoint, he's causing friction. He's acted unprofessionally. There has been a fracas, to put it bluntly, in the back, and he's injury prone.
Yeah.
So he's probably one of the highest earners, if not the highest earner.
Yeah.
You would, that's very good reasons to drop him. Yeah. And, I'm not picking sides, but from a company standpoint, you can see the logic behind this guy causes unhappiness. This guy has done this. This guy has gone into business for himself. He's costing us a lot of money, and he's injury prone. Why are we paying him this much?
And can we ever trust him again? Can we ever put him in that position again and this not happen again? And he is my favorite wrestler of all time. I think I've said this before on the show or on other shows. I love him. I did not want it to go this way. I also don't necessarily want this to be the last thing we think of as him. But at least we got a really good match that night. And if that's his last ever match, I kind of really like that match. He went out as champ. I wish we didn't have this other stuff. But But I never thought we'd see him again. And I think if this is it, I think I'm still kind of thankful that we got a chance to see him again. If you'd have said to me in 2018 he would ever get in a wrestling ring again for a company, I'd have said never in a million years. It's never going to happen. But we had that in AEW and we had this run. And as I say, I'm not saying it's over for him, but he feels like the longest path back for me. I don't necessarily see how you make amends on this enough that people in the back are going to want to work with him again, except for the fact that they also know they'd make a lot of money working with him again, and we know money is a driver. But yeah, I think it's a tough road back from Punk from this.
Though, if we look at our histories, a certain balding Fu Manchu wearing racist cunt was a cunt, but made money, so people, turned up and did their job around him.
But that was for Vince, and Vince operates differently.
The thing is, he used to do. He was doing it in WCW as well.
But there's not a lot of difference between Bischoff's WCW and Vince, is there? Like WCW was Carnage Land, wasn't it? It was so. I'd like to think AEW's run differently and run better, but we certainly heard, we talked about this in the All Out predictions. There's been so much talk about disrest in the back and things like that. And this isn't going to bring you a unified locker room, is it? And allowing it to perpetuate isn't going to bring you a unified locker room.
So my question is, who got the squirrel-sized chunk of hair from this one?
I'm going to imagine it came out of Kenny's hair.
Oh no, it's got to be Matt, surely.
Oh, and wasn't one of them knocked out? One of the Bucks. I can't remember if it's Matt or Nick. The rumor
Matt,
is,
wasn't it?
Yeah,
the one who got hit by the chair.
Yeah. And like we're talking about the suspensions. We'd had the known out loud suspension of Eddie Kingston based off of a slap in the back. So there is that precedent as well of going, if physical violence took place, you can't suspend Eddie Kingston for a slap and not do it to the others. But I imagine that was a very tough couple of hours for Tony Khan. He must have gone, oh, this pay-per-view's gone really well. And then 2 hours later must have been there with his head in his hands going, I think I'm going to have to suspend my champion, my trios champions, my EVPs, loads of my backstage talent relations. That must have been bad times for him.
Yeah, but the thing is as well, he could have been, and if I was in his position, I'd have been royally pissed because you've been let down by the face of your company, the three big faces that started your company, people you rely on and trust in the back. I could imagine that wasn't a head in hands thing. I think that was I'm suspending you now because if I don't, I may fire you all.
Yeah.
Again, and I wouldn't pay to be in that situation whatsoever.
And it's very hard because we know what Punk said. We heard it out loud, and he basically called all these people out and said, "Come at me," and come at me backstage. So I kind of see what he did, but there is a part of me that goes, "Don't come at him backstage. Like, leave it and maybe have that conversation another day, and probably that conversation with Tony Khan to kind of go, a line was crossed, we're not happy about this, or something." And it did feel like, and I know probably everyone's blood was up and that was what caused all of this, but why go to his door that night? Clearly bad things were going to happen. I think people should have been a little bit more sensible about it.
I'm gonna steal Lacey's thunder here. Ego, Punk's ego, Omega's ego, the Bucks' ego. These guys are known for having big egos. There's a reason FTR aren't the AEW tag team champions.
Don't poke that bear next to me. I don't want to hear about this again.
But it is a problem. It is, we're back onto ego. When it comes to the one thing that surprises me, the name that hasn't been mentioned, the person that was called out in the press conference was wise enough to go, nope, not my circus, not my monkeys.
I must admit, I was surprised. I was expecting to hear that name at some point. Like I really was. And yeah, I'm with you. And I think if it was because he was there and he heard all this and he chose not to, pat on the back for the boy, because I think that was the right choice. I don't think that was, we've seen the repercussions of this, and I think he made the right choice at the time. Although I'm sure Punk would, if he was given a mic right now, go, I told you, coward shit rather than cowboy shit. But I think it was the sensible thing to do, is not get involved at the time.
Yeah.
The thing is, with the Bucks and Omega, they fucked themselves, because whether they are brought back and out of the suspension, they cannot be EVPs anymore.
Why not?
Because
what if they did nothing?
They've clearly done something.
Have they clearly done something? What if they just went to have a conversation and someone attacked them?
I really wouldn't have gone that. With everything that's happened.
Let me put it this way. Bobby Kotick has managed to stay in a job for decades, and he apparently is a massive piece of shit. So,
I mean, and again, I think it was unwise to go and have that conversation. But there is a believable, there is a believable world where they just went to have a conversation, and it physically kicked off at them.
The trouble is, we're back to the point I think Lacey's trying to make. The EVPs, they can't do this. They are more than just.
They should wait till Wednesday, next TV taping, when cooler heads prevail, and you do it as a formal thing, as any manager in any business does.
Don't get me wrong. I think it's unlikely that it was a calm conversation they attempted to have. I do think that's unlikely. But you say any manager, one of my staff members is kicking off. I'm having a conversation with them right then and there. I'm not waiting till Wednesday, because I can't wait till Wednesday. I'm their manager. I'm trying to resolve that right then and there. But I would try and do it calmly. And I probably wouldn't have just called them pieces of shit beforehand, or vice versa. So that contextually it's slightly off. But yeah.
If it is sort of the way that he was, as we all know where Punk's head was, because we heard him, you don't go and poke the bear. So if you go in there, and even if they do just go in to have a conversation, which I don't think they fucking did, but they're poking the bear.
And I grant you, but as I say, just for kind of like the potential of anything happening, what we think and what happened can often be two different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they should be stripped of their EVPs, definitely, even if they do come back.
To be fair, and I'll be honest, because I don't often take sides in this one, I think it's been a mistake for the longest time that they are still EVPs. If you are active talent, you should not have a role like that at all, because, no offense, it's far too easy to take that power and use it. And quite frankly, wasn't Kenny meant to be in charge of the women's division? And look how that's panned out. Yeah. I think yes, they helped start the company, and I think if they keep that VP role, it is merely going to be ceremonial. They will. It's just a title. They aren't actually going to be in charge of anything.
I think they should have something, shouldn't they? And I don't know what that something is, but you almost go like for the efforts. I mean, historically, not off the back of this. Historically, for the kind of the efforts that went into to probably creating everything like that, I feel like that should be recognised. That recognition should be there, and there should be something. But yeah, I'm with you on that, Taylor. I get very iffy when talent have anything to do with specifically stuff that impacts other people on the card, because it is very hard, I think, to be impartial and to be fair. And you will have friends, and you will have things the way you think it should go. So I do think it's a really difficult role, and I think it puts them in this position. Because if it wasn't now and it wasn't this, at some point in time, someone, and people have before, but something like this would happen where someone would go, no, you have a role in this company and you've used your role unfairly. And that's obviously what happened tonight, and that's what led to this. So again, probably a very good reason for not letting your talent hold positions of power, even if it's just nominal power in a company. Well, then Tony has been clear and said that he's the one who books it and no one else books anything. So I guess there's
But there's
balance.
there's ways around that.
Yeah.
There's
Oh, yeah.
influence. There's other things that you can do to put people in the positions that you want them to be.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have been around wrestling a long time. We've all read books on it, so we know this shit is commonplace. Whether it be Ole Anderson or Dusty pushing the Sons or whatever, Greg Gagne and stuff like that. You know, it has happened. So you have to be very
Hogan pushing himself, and Kevin Nash pushing himself, and all those sort of things. Yeah.
But I think right now is, and I think because I think we should move on to Dynamite now. They've been very clever in how they've handled it so far. They've done what they need to do, no more, no less. And what they will probably have to do is fully address this once the investigation is done and say, this is what we found. This is what steps we're taking. They need that transparency just to, again, more than anything, not for the fans, but for the money. They need to reassure investors, advertisers, all that stuff that, look, this is what we're doing. These are the steps we've taken, because that's when you get into trouble.
One very last thing I promise before we'll go on to Dynamite, and it speaks to the point you're making there, and I think it is a good way of segueing it, because you said it earlier, Chris, about the stories being fed to Meltzer. So specifically, the story that Punk references was not broken by Dave Meltzer; it was broken by Sean Ross Sapp, and Sean Ross Sapp has come out and said categorically he has never spoken to any of them about this story. The story didn't come from them. And he said categorically he's not even allowed to speak to them. They're the only three people in the company that he has to go through a media handler to do. However, doesn't mean the story didn't come from them, did it? Because, as you said, we've been around the wrestling world for years. We've read the books. The smartest people don't do their own dirty work, do they? They hand that news down to someone else and someone else does it. But yeah, I think it is just that, again, that for that clarity thing, what Punk directly accused them of, the person who received it is saying that didn't happen. So potentially, again, Punk was wrong about that specific thing, but maybe not wrong about the origins of it. Yeah.
I can't wait for the Dark Side of the Ring on this.
Yeah. I don't think you'll have to wait long as well, because I think they'll want to cover this quickly, won't they?
Considering the ego's involved as well, people will want to talk about it.
Yeah. So we come into
one for Cornette to come back to.
But we come to Wednesday night, and we knew we had a TV show, didn't we? We knew we had Dynamite, and of course, all of this happened pre-Wednesday. We'd heard talk on Wednesday that there was a suspension, etc., etc., and we come to like the Wednesday night TV program, and I think I went into it. I don't know how you guys were going. This is a must-watch. What the hell are they going to do?
Oh yeah, one of my fun things leading up to this show was the fact that Twitter gives you, I don't want to say personalized trending. I just want to point out that for me, Max Caster was very, very high, and I clicked on it, and it was a lot of people absolutely salivating at the fact that Max Caster was going to be given a live microphone, and what the fuck was he going to say?
Yeah,
we'll address that later.
So Dynamite opens with a pre-recorded hostage statement, as it puts, telling us that the titles had been stripped from everyone. No mention of the suspensions, just that the titles were stripped, and that we would have new trios champions from a match tonight, and that there would be a tournament.
As I say, again, all of our dreams come true.
Yeah. Tournament.
Yeah.
For the world title.
Was
not an interim world title, the full world title this time.
Was the announcement of a tournament, because I know we joked about it, and I think we do have a bit of AEW tournament fatigue, don't we? But do we think off the top of our heads there was a better way to do it? Because I kind of didn't like the idea of it being a hand-picked one-on-one or a multi-man match or something like that. It did feel fitting for a tournament. However, I think there's a lesson here of don't run so many bloody tournaments, because you might need to use one at some point for something important.
Short of doing the Casino Battle Royale for the title.
Yeah.
And that's only because that's the only other option you've got if you want
Yeah.
to do something like that is Royal Rumble, basically.
Yeah, they've shot themselves in the foot because they go to that well so often that now they have to. It's another fucking tournament.
Well, and they had a reasonable time constraint as well, didn't they? Because they probably had a look when they were doing their panic kind of what do we do. They probably went, well, when we want to do this crowning at something big, for Ash, and as you say, they're not going to spring that out till November, are they? So I think they probably went tournament because we can do that relatively quickly, and we can get a big payoff on a big event or a big TV event, should I say?
Though I do have questions with their brackets of how the fuck Jericho gets a fucking boost straight into the semi-finals. I
'Cause he
get
needs a
Moxley
week off.
getting it because of Mox being the guy that just lost the title.
World champ, former world champ that just beat Bryan Danielson.
I think it's as well. Those brackets were very interesting. Yeah, Jericho. I think, to be honest, I think it's just they needed to give Jericho time to rest up and heal because that match was very physical, and he's old and he's done a lot with that body, and I should imagine it doesn't heal up as quick. That's no knock on him. That's just no offense, mate. You're cracking on a bit. But I did the interesting the way they was the annotations to the brackets of mentioning was it Bryant 6-time world champion Jericho X-Man. Not here, they're not. You're using Fed stuff for that count, so that's interesting. But what I think they're trying to do is make that. They are desperately trying to make that tournament feel very big because they've got to.
And I think like we have Sammy in there, and we have Darby in there, and of course they're lean.
The odd ones out.
Yes,
but the lean for them was kind of pushing to the longest reigning TNT champion, wasn't it? And I can make Sammy 3-time TNT champion now, whatever it is. I think they wanted
Sky.
I think they wanted
4 times, did he?
Because I think they wanted some of the pillars in.
Yeah, I think they needed them in there just to say, hey, look, we might get. It's not going to be them. I hate to say it, Darby and Sammy aren't there yet. Sammy, because he might be a bit of a problem backstage a minute. And Darby, I love, but Darby is this perennial underdog, and I don't think he's anywhere near a level where he should be challenging for a world title yet. I think that's probably to come. But they do stand. They are the ones when you look at that rack and go, yeah, no.
The tournament bracket felt to me like almost a way of I'm going to say addressing, or at least trying to address what we hear have been a lot of the backstage complaints. And I think they've gone, okay, we want some of our biggest names in this because you want some of your biggest names in this. We want some people who seem to be positive influences and have the support of a lot of people back behind the scenes, which is Jericho and is Moxley. And it can't just be full of ex-WWE guys. We need some of our pillars in here. So I feel like it was designed to give that as a view, but I'm with you. The winner isn't coming out of that match, is it? But I think it's important that they were in there.
So, who we got to win then? Because we know that whoever Mox fights loses, so Mox is in the final. So it's who wins out of Bryan and Jericho to go against Mox.
I think it's going to be Jericho. Because you've got to bear in mind from a story point, you have that history with MJF. So they might be able to play on that. So you could, but they're both heels. So, Ugh.
Every fibre of my being wants it to be Jericho just to see your face, Lacey. It'd be amazing. But from a wrestling standpoint, I'd love it to be Danielson. One of the things that I think is quite strange about it is you've got the Jericho Danielson story and the Garcia story going along that's kind of coming into this tournament. But as you say, Taylor, like MJF feels like the natural next step. We kind of want MJF to get in that title picture. So you want someone that MJF can go against. And they've already got a storyline for Jericho Danielson. So I kind of go, it would be weird. But yeah, there is history with Jericho. Not so much history with Moxie as there is with Jericho, but yeah, I don't know. I don't see them. I think they like that Jericho Danielson Garcia story, and there's more legs in that. So I don't think it will come from them. I think it'll be Mox. because I think even though he's just recently lost it to Punk, and they obviously had reasons for that, I think because Punk was such a draw for them, I think they went with Moxley during that period for the interim, and I think they've got faith. And I know we're jumping ahead slightly, but that promo they gave Moxley, I mean, if there wasn't a rallying cry for rally round me and rally round the dressing room, I think that was it. So I think it will be Moxley.
I think Mox is the safest pair of hands. He is the trusted. He is the go-to. He is the Bret Hart, if you want, if you will.
And possibly again, you want MJF here. We want heel MJF, and we want him to beat someone that's loved. And I think Moxley is loved by that crowd, isn't it? You know, he can come out, do his wild thing, the crowd can sing along, and then MJF can do slimy MJF things and win and take the title from him.
See, I'm hoping that if it is Mox, it is a short one, because even back when he was Dean Ambrose, I've never been a massive fan of Mox. He needs to be in there with someone that makes him have a match, not let him lead.
Well, in theory, if we are thinking MJF gets the title at Full Gear, so you need a champ till November, and that's probably and what like Arthur Ashe will be last week in September, first week in October, isn't it? I can't remember which one.
Yeah,
So you're only looking at about a month and a half that you need someone to carry that title. And not to be mean to Moxley, but I think what a good pair of hands for a month and a half. And he can talk on the mic, so I think he'd be quite good with MJF barracking him. Although I still wish I was getting Punk MJF, but that's...
I also think because the contrast of their philosophies in their character, you are going to have a good back and forth on the mic between those two. You've got a little bit of it here, and I think that was a water test, because it opens with MJF coming out, and this is the thing that I love. He was clearly doing a CM Punk thing, wasn't he? With his coming out with the shirt, and the way he was talking, and the way he was slagging off, but then taking it back, and just the ways he was doing things. That was like CM Punk levels of. You've seen him do certain things like that. I was like, oh,
absolutely, absolutely. No one really spoke about anything, did they? Specifically, and no one kind of directly referenced it. But I think for me, it was a great sign of the faith they have in MJF, and probably the fact that they know they've got him signed for X amount of time, and hopefully possibly a little bit longer. That he seemed to be the one person they went lean into that Punk stuff. Fucking jibe it, like the kind of laying in the crowd like Punk did and all this sort of stuff. I think they said fill your boots, but don't necessarily talk about it out loud. And I thought beautiful stuff.
Yeah, easily the segment of the night, just that, and then him then going on about talking to his best mate, the Game. And just the subtle Fed references.
They were not subtle Fed references.
They're subtle enough that they can't be sued for using Fed gimmicks.
Yeah. But also that kind of face shit he was doing, like wearing the buffalo top with the Buffalo quarterback, Josh Allen, and things like that. And you'd said in the review show about the MJF getting the face reaction. And of course here he did again, didn't he? He got like kind of a hero's welcome, but he was so slimy with it. Even when he was doing the easy pop to the crowd stuff, it was just pure slime. And the man's a master on the mic, isn't he? He knows how to work a crowd so well.
Genius.
Yeah.
We had a trios match for the titles, which was Death Triangle versus the Best Friends and Pockets.
Yeah, the titles went to the right people. I know people. I know people love the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy, and I like Danhausen, but yeah, give it Death Triangle. See, that's where it belongs.
Yeah. My thing with Pockets is, it's all right to see it at a indie show that they come around once every 6 months, once a year. Doing that same thing every week in every match that they're on, the joke gets old. It's my one issue with Danhausen as well, is if he was on TV every week doing the cursing and the tequila walk, edge of the ring walk kick bit at a house show when you haven't seen him for 6 months and he does it. But I'm all in. Fucking feed me that shit because I love some stupid wrestling when it's stupid and funny. But you can't do those things to the same audience all the time. They are perfect for house shows. It's not for TVs.
Surprisingly enough, this is another one where I disagree. I think it's fantastic. I'm with you. I wouldn't do it every week, but I wouldn't change the act either. I would just use them possibly, maybe at the degrees that they use them now. I mean, I'm not the slightest bit sick of Danhausen. I'm certainly not sick of Orange Cassidy. I wouldn't have put the trios titles on them, though. I think the right decision was made, and I think that's why the Best Friends have a really good place on this card, is that you can push them into title. You don't expect them to win, but you can push them into title matches. And Cassidy, you can push them up into bigger feuds, but also they can work down the bottom end of the card and everywhere in between. And I think they're a really versatile act for me. But yeah, like the right team won by a million miles for me. And because we'll get great matches out of these guys.
And the telling thing was the two teams that were picked. So obviously you've got a reason why the Dark Order's not there. They're hurt. Fine. Yeah. Good enough. House of Black was not mentioned at all.
It's because Alistair's been given his conditional release. Coming out that his release is he's free to go home and fix whatever it is that's going on, because supposedly it's some mental health issues, stuff that's going on. But he cannot work for anyone, not even doing indie shots. If at any point he decides that he wants to wrestle again, he has got to go back and honour his contract.
I hope there's a really positive resolution to this, because certainly that seems to be what is being reported, is that there's that he's got mental well-being issues. And God, like we talked about this recently on a Reacts, didn't we, Chris, about so much stuff happens to people in the world, and you can ostensibly look from the outside in and going, wow, that person's got the world at their feet, all the success, and that doesn't necessarily impact how you feel about the world and your place in it. So we want, I guess, nothing but good wishes and well wishes for Malachi Black or Tommy End, or whichever one of the guys is today. But
come back as Tommy, please.
Yeah, but there is also a part of me that I can see why they've kept the contract, but I hope it's for good reasons. I hope they've kept his contract, the conditional release, because this is the reason why. I hope he hasn't got mental well-being issues, and also they're kind of holding his wrestling career at ransom as well. I'm not saying they are, but I just hope that that's not the case.
Yeah, that's a very Fed thing to do.
Yeah. And I don't want to see those sort of practices happen. And don't get me wrong, I could see you go in, we don't want to release you for your mental health and then find out 2 days later you've signed for the Fed. But yeah, I just hope that everything. I hope Tony Khan's the person I think he is on things like this, but I just don't know.
I mean, they did support Mox, so hopefully.
Yeah.
We do see the Acclaimed come out.
Okay, because I love this. This was
and shut down quickly by Swerve.
Yeah, this was the only thing they could do, but they did it in a way that was clever, funny, and advances the story. So that makes perfect sense. And they did something that is very rare. They let Billy have the mic, and we all know Billy's shit on the mic.
I think as well, it probably got Swerve over even more. I know we're talking about this leaning to the heel, but I think the crowd probably appreciated him more, because people do like that, don't you? As much as we tell ourselves we don't, but that's a real pop moment for you, isn't it? Where the bad guy, in this case, a good guy, bad guy, comes out and stops the thing that you want to see. And I think Swerve come across brilliantly in this.
Yeah, he understood the mission perfectly and delivered perfectly. That's the thing with Swerve. I mean, I'm not overly familiar with him, but from what I'm seeing, this guy gets it and he knows exactly what he's doing. And what's very telling as well is the fact it was Swerve and just Swerve.
Yeah.
Keith Lee was nowhere in sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things with Swerve, because Keith Lee's a hard one to do either babyface or heel with him doing promos, because he has no differential in how he talks at any time. Angry, same voice. Sad, same voice. Pissed off, same voice. Just ordering some food, same voice.
Even when he sings, it's the same voice. It's amazing.
It's just literally, it's just like one note, which this way you send out Swerve, he can be on the mic against the Acclaim, and I haven't listened to Swerve's music, but supposedly he can throw bars.
It's all right.
So you could get that as a thing going into stuff as well. So there's definitely more to putting Swerve out there than having both of them. And yeah,
he's a super. I think Swerve's a superstar waiting to happen. And I mean, not like a WWE superstar sat out. I think he's a very high end of a card waiting to happen. And I think this might be the thing that really likes to touch paper that could propel him up there.
Yeah, he is definitely something special.
We get our first of the tournament matches.
We had a Wardlow Tony Nese first. Wardlow smashes.
That
Tony
wasn't
Nese.
Anything.
I must have been in the loo when that happened.
But I
it was about 3 minutes.
Because you got the Wardlow kind of rallying cry at the end, didn't you? Like his promo, and I think it was them kind of going, here's Wardlow. Here is something you like, something that isn't attached to any of the bad stuff that may have happened the other night.
So we got Danielson versus Hangman, who there's the one I was surprised that, is in a title tournament. I know obviously he wasn't reported to be anywhere near what happened, but still, with the stank of the air that was going on, surprised me. But thankfully he lost, because I think if he'd have won and gone into the next round, a certain coach on Twitter might have chirped up.
There's an argument that the empty-headed fucking dumb fuck going into business for himself might have caused all of this. But I think probably this was maybe a reward for not getting involved, but also we can't reward you too far, because you possibly were to blame for the start of some of this, at least. So you're going to take the loss, but you have been a world champion, and we're kind of establishing that this tournament is about ex-world champions and people who have had TNT champions or world champions somewhere in the world.
So
that it's an important tournament for that.
Sting's safe for special occasions.
Yeah, he can't wrestle again until November. He's had a match.
But I think from a different take on this, just this match was really telling me, because it was good.
Yeah.
And I think this is the problem with Page. He needs someone to lead him. You put him there with Bryan, and he has a really good match. He has an okay-ish match with Punk, but does anyone remember the Lance Archer match, which was garbage? Or the Cole matches, which were Adam Cole matches, really?
Yeah.
I think this actually, to me, this exposes Hangman as perhaps not being as competent in the ring as he probably should be for the level he is. regardless of the outside stuff, in-ring stuff. I think he needs someone to lead him.
I
I
just
felt
think he's
like
quite boring.
I felt like
in the ring.
towards the end of his New Japan run, and I can't remember what year it was, but it was one of the G1s he was in, and it felt like it really clicked for me, and it felt like he was carrying other people to good matches, which is always a good sign, isn't it? If you're the one that's bringing out the best in others, then you're going to go far, kid. But yeah, it does feel like there's been a bit of a regression, and I think you're right. It now feels like somewhere between then and now, he seemed to have become reliant on someone else bringing out the best in him. And he's not quite the Page that I thought we were going to get, or that it was indicated that there probably would be. But yeah, one hell of a match. I love this match. I thought it was fantastic.
But again, like
But
I said,
again,
I think
Danielson,
Daniel
isn't it?
Bryan.
Best in the room. Yeah,
Daniel,
yeah.
We then have Tony Storm. Who's she was in with?
Penelope Ford.
Yes.
yes, Penelope Pass. Penelope back.
Yes.
The one people actually care about.
Penelope Ford. So, yes,
No,
that
I'm with
happened.
It's nice to see Penelope back. I didn't realize she'd not been around because she'd been injured. She's got a lot of good.
So last I saw was her and Bunny
Ali.
and that whole tag thing with Tay and Anna Jay and
Not to get too distracted by the women's roster, but that's what you said there, Taylor. I think that's one of the hard things about sometimes what happens on the women's roster is there seems to be, you don't even get necessarily told that someone's injured, do you? Like you expect to find out someone on the men's roster, them going, oh, they're not going to be about 3 months. They've got this injury, and sometimes just mysteriously people disappear for long periods of time. When you could even just run that as part of the show, you can talk about. Oh, they're injured in this match, the other match.
If you want to, because the whole thing is they're trying to copy, quite cleverly trying to copy aspects of UFC. So how you need that? So, this person's injured. This match happened. They're injured. They're out for X amount.
Yeah.
If it's even if it because it's really, it adds to it all adds. And I actually like Penelope Ford. I like it when she's teamed up with the Bunny because there's crazy and there's crazy.
Yeah.
And those two work really well together.
and eye candy.
Also, follow the Bunny on Twitter because she's like a massive Puppet Master fan, and I love her for it.
And her Twitch streams are an interesting watch, but generally because she seems to kind of go from sedate to extreme rage about almost nothing very, very quickly, and then back down again. But in an entertaining way.
And then for our main event, we had the ROH Pure Championship between Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta. Fuck me some wrestling.
Yeah, I did. I've never seen this Pure Championship before, so so having quickly getting up to speed on the rules and everything. Holy hell, those two! Holy hell, those two! They are such a talent that you realize you are underutilized as Garcia and Yuta. Garcia came out obviously winning this and being the new champion because he's hometown boy and everything, but it didn't feel like, oh, you're getting this because it's hometown. It's no, you're getting this because you're equally as good. And their match was just absolute joy to watch. It was pure on wrestling, and it never dragged, it never lulled. It was just like, oh wow, you guys are good.
Yeah, it was proper wrestling. And the thing is, they had the match at the Ring of Honor show. And I think it was more just because it was a bit too soon to give Garcia the belt because you had only had it for a couple of weeks at that point. And I thought, oh, that'll be their level for how good of a match it was. This shit all over that. And that one of the pay-per-view was fucking awesome.
They basically FTR Briscoed it.
Yeah.
I think the thing that really stood out for me as well, because it was the placement. So to go back to, I guess, where the aftermath all starts, what a crazy end coming back off the back of a pay-per-view. You've got MJF back, you have Punk as champion, you have the Elite as trios champions, and then they have to rebook all this, and they go, "This is our main. These are the guys that we're investing in." And I know, I'm an AEW lover. I'm not totally blinking on it, but we talk about why we love certain wrestling, and these are the sort of reasons why I love this company. Is they had faith in these guys and said, "You guys can put on an amazing main event." And don't get me wrong, they've put some time and effort recently into building a story around certainly sort of Garcia. So there's main event players to come in the post match, but you don't see this and the only direct comparison, I guess, is WWE. You don't see this in WWE. You don't see faith being put in your talents like this, and I think that's why this is so great. And if these guys didn't wrestle again for 3 years, but in 3 years' time they would all out main event for the title, you'd be happy as Larry. But also, by the same token, I kind of want to see him wrestle again quite a bit in that gap between, and having things like the pure title. And to be honest, I'm a bit done with the RH titles being on AEW TV now. I would like to see them, for example, wrestling for the TNT title or something like that, because I want it to feel more AEWE. But what excellent faith, and they paid it off because they put on an amazing match.
It's very clever because this is like you put these on in your main event because not only you're advancing the story, putting on a great match, you are pushing them up the card and saying these guys are important, and they've looked and gone, right, well, we've just lost 4 ready-made stars. We need to make sure we are building more, and they are doing that as well. Another clever move.
And let's not forget, a mere X amount of minutes ago, they had Hangman Page against Bryan Danielson on this show. Not many companies wouldn't have put that as the main event in the evening, would they? But they still kind of went, these boys are the main event. And brilliant, absolute genius. And it paid off, luckily. And I think the crowd got invested, really, really, really interested in it. And it shows some faith in your really talented people, and it will pay off more often than it doesn't.
See, the only thing you said there about them not being for the ROH belts, I want the ROH level of rules, because is the thing, though. This is what makes these matches better. And on top of that, Caprice Coleman on comms. Can I have him, Taz, and Regal on comms, please?
God, I remember when Taz first went on commentary, no one was begging for him to be on commentary.
But it's that thing of like, I hope that there's something going to happen with ROH. Whether that means that we lose a Cesaro and a Yuta and sort of other people down there, but they do this level of wrestling, I will be all for it.
Well, we talked about a bloated roster, didn't we? And maybe there's a solution for a bloated roster. Take some of that roster and put them over there in ROH with some degree of a TV show somewhere, and let some acts shine that aren't getting on the card, or some that already are on the card. Let them go down there and help those ones that are going to struggle for TV time, like some of your Stokely Hathaway squad. You look at like a Lee Moriarty and people like that. You go, actually, ROH would be a really good home for people like this, because they'll get a lot more screen time and a lot more chance to show what they can do, and probably time to learn their promo skills. And albeit harshly, learn it in front of a live crowd who might turn on you. But sometimes that's the way you've got to do it, haven't you? You've almost got to go right into the fire and do it that way, because sitting in front of the mirror doing it's not the same as when a crowd are not reacting and you have to kind of go on the fly a little bit.
But it's one of those, clearly this wasn't the planned Dynamite that was probably meant to happen this week. But probably one of the better Dynamites in the last few weeks.
I've got can I ask you guys a question before we talk about Dynamite as a whole and maybe what we felt after it is and again, it's specific to this feud. So Daniel Garcia and Jericho and Moxley kind of fighting. Sorry, Jericho and Danielson fighting for his affections is the primary part of this story, and that story looks like it's going to continue. Did anyone else feel at the end where Danielson come out that maybe this could lead to some Utah stuff as well, because
Yes,
Utah
because his
is
reaction wasn't.
Yeah.
He was not happy to see Brian.
Yeah, and he's BCC, but all of a sudden, and I know it's the code of honor, but almost so you've got a new toy over there you like more, and probably the toy that was suggested you wanted first anyway. And I wondered whether this might lead to some great kind of dissension stories with Utah maybe going, yeah, and I know you wouldn't want him to go to the Jericho Appreciation, but that this could be really great for the Utah story arc as well, and layered storylines. Love you, AEW, for this if that's what you're really going for here.
Time will tell.
Yeah,
it is one of those. There is quite a bit that could still come out of this. Just can we not have Jericho around it?
No, Jericho's got to be around it. Jericho's a star.
All right, just not in the ring.
I will take a little bit less in the ring. I'm with you, but he's, and as I say, for all intents and purposes, he seems to be a very good influence backstage, which surprises me because he used to be quite a dick backstage for all intents and purposes, but he seems to have grown out of that to a degree.
Just puts himself over.
Or people choose to put him over.
Oh no, I was going more in the media with the reports that are coming out that he was the saving grace backstage, and the report was that it came from a source that was him.
Yeah, we're all our own best press officers sometimes, aren't we?
Let's face it, he came up in WCW. If anyone's going to know how to play the game, it's going to be Jericho.
That is true. So,
as I say, where are we at with AEW after the pay-per-view, the horrendous start of the week, and then what we saw on Dynamite? Where do we feel like the company are? And are we worried? Do we think there's a bright future? Do we think there's a way out of this, or do we think that the fall has started?
I am very much interested to see how they handle all of this, and how they handle it will be a marker on anything going forward. Depending on who they sack, if they do sack people, will definitely depend on whether it is all elite wrestling or all friends wrestling. And yeah, I think how he's handled it is the best way of doing it, and is better than Vince would have done, because we know what Vince would have done because we've seen it when he gets smacked in the face by Bret Hart at fucking Survivor Series on Wrestling with Shadows. He's running this as a proper corporate entity, and a sports team is like if something happened in a football team or something like that. So, Tony Khan has to be commended for how he's dealing with it. As I said, it's just one of those of I'm just waiting to see what comes out of it, and I have my desired way this ends, but it would upset you, said.
It probably wouldn't. I might think it's silly, but it probably wouldn't upset me, if I'm honest.
Bye-bye, buckaroos.
I mean, my question would be why to that. I mean, is that based just off the fact you don't like them, or do you think there'd be a better company without them? Or do you think they've done something that makes them deserve that they should be fired?
I think they've done something that deserves to be fired.
And what did they do?
I would have said that if they've thrown the first punch,
but there's a big if there, isn't there? There's a big if.
Then they deserve to go, and also it means that I don't have to see them, which is a win-win.
So I feel like, and I'm trying to be fair and open. I feel like the answer to my question is you don't like them.
Oh, but that's already known.
Yeah. Because I think that if is too big. So I think like what we're saying is you'd like them to go because you don't want them to be there anyway.
Well, it would make my viewing experience better, yes.
Yeah, which is fair enough. You know, like there's plenty of people in plenty of companies and plenty of things where you kind of go, they're not for me, and I'd prefer it without them. But I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily well. It could easily be equatable to this, but that's not equatable to this in that kind of framework that you've put there. You're not saying they did something really bad, they need to go. You're saying I don't like them, they need to go, and they might have done something really bad.
I'm saying if they have done something, if it comes out,
but as I say, that's a big if, and you didn't start with that. You said what I wouldn't like, and I would get upset by what you think should happen.
Is that they?
But there was no if there, was there? There was a I think this should happen, and that's very different.
And they can take Twinkle Toes McFingerbang with them.
Thank you, Jim
Yes.
Cornette.
Yeah.
Look, I think from an in-ring standpoint, I think they're actually in a healthier place than they were after the pay-per-view. They've actually done something to build newer stars in Garcia and Yuta. I think they've taken the right steps in addressing the World Championship. I think they've put the trios titles on a better team that people are way more invested in. And I think right now, from an in-ring perspective, I know we've got tournament fatigue. I think they're in a good spot. Behind the scenes, corporate wise, I think the right steps have been taken. I think we are in the adjustment period. This is the calm period. This is the okay, we've taken steps here and here, and we now have to see it play out. In ring, I don't think you have to worry. People are going to love the tournament, and I think it's going back on Mox, and I think then we're going to get the MJF stuff, which then I think because the way the show started with the two promos, with the way that MJF cut the Punk-esque face, then flipped when he had almost straight away to the MJF style, screw everybody, and Mox's fiery promo. You know you're in safe hands there. You know you've got good stories there. You're building stars and everything. Ring's fine. It's just what happens behind the scenes, because clearly I think Tony Khan's going to have to not just address what's happened between the Bucks and Punk and Omega. I think he's probably going to have to address a lot of the unhappiness and go, right, I think we need to take steps back here to prevent us becoming TNA, WCW, and WWE. I think we need to do more and do better because they can, because they're in the, even though they're the number two, they're in this great position where they can look at everything that's come before, everything the competition is doing, and go, well, that worked, we'll take that. That worked, we'll take that. That didn't work, we'll get rid of that. And they are in a great position. Sometimes being in the second place spot is better because it allows you to be way more flexible.
The chase is normally more interesting than the title run, isn't it? That's the truth of it for some of these things. I think, being in second place allows you to maybe hit some of the pitfalls more without being ultimately judged as badly as your number one. You don't have as much to lose as number two, do you? So I think you're spot on there. I love this Dynamite. This is one of my favourite Dynamites for ages. And I didn't think that was going to be the case coming into Wednesday night. And I think the thing I loved about it is it showcased how good a roster they have. And that's how good a roster they have, regardless of whether Punk's there, regardless of whether Kenny's there, regardless of whether the Bucks are there. I'm quietly hopeful after this Wednesday that this might be a really positive thing for the rest of the roster and maybe the company going forward. I think this might allow them to divorce themselves from some of the issues that they might have had. And some of those issues being things like, and I love Punk, make that clear again. But sometimes having a superstar come in after lots of people feel like they've done a lot of work to get it there might not be such a good thing for the people who have done that work. And by the same token, people who've been there since the start can sometimes become embittered when improvements are made and it's not directly related to them. So I hope there's a lot of lessons learned from what we've seen here, and I hope the company's stronger for what happens here. I do think, though, for that to happen, I think at least one of them probably needs to go. And unfortunately, I think it has to be, if there's one side that is provably you did this, you threw first punches, whatever, and that those first punches weren't based, that they were kind of aggressively thrown rather than verbally someone's pulled them into it, I think that person has to go. but actually I've got a feeling that person's Punk, and I've got a feeling probably the healthiest thing for the company right now might be Punk going. And that's such a shame to say, because the worst part of all of this was, and there's an argument that says MJF did this to Wardlow. Wardlow's breakout moment was somewhat overshadowed by Punk, by whether MJF was going to be there or not. But this would have been an absolute crowning moment. And I know that MJF will have many, many matches in his career, but if he took that title from Punk as it looked like it was going to be, then I think that's megastar, even beyond. And I think it's a shame that he will probably never get that moment. But Tony Khan, get that locker room together, because I think you've got along the way, we've seen lots of people seem to get on really well, and all of a sudden there seems to be pockets of dislike. And I think he needs to get that core group back together again, using people like Moxie, using people like Jericho to band it together, and then get your Utas and your Garcias to kind of integrate. Get William Regals in there to make them all work together. And I think you've got a fantastic product and a fantastic roster. And maybe it's time to get rid of the poison, and that poison might be all four of those people.
That's fair. That's fair.
But what I lost in ring,
it actually seems strange. All this has happened, and we're going, actually, no, this is a good thing. There's a chance that this is actually a shock to the system, that the company needs to shake things up to progress further.
And I do wonder whether, like, it's my love of AEW and my rose-tinted glasses. Am I trying to see positive, to try and to almost turn this into a positive? But yes, if again, you said to me 3 months ago, a wrestling company would be better off if you took out like 4 of its best people and 4 of its biggest names. I'd have gone, that doesn't sound like anything sensible. But maybe having seen that enforced on a company, I think some good could come of it. You know, like Hogan at his worst at places, if someone had axed him out, it would have taken some money off the top of the card, but it might have done some good for the company. And, you know, notably along the years, there's been people who you go, you could never drop them, but maybe companies are better off for not having some of those voices behind the scenes.
So that would be where we will leave it for now. It won't be as long between shows as it was from the first to the All Out coverage, namely because there's only a couple of months until the next big show, and if we get more information that comes out and actual some facts and stuff of the backstage shenanigans, we may come back and do some coverage of that as well.
I was going to say, I love to do this when I'm going to put it out there, not to put pressure on anyone, but it might feel nice to maybe come back and do a review of the R4S show, because it looks like it's going to have a number of big matches on the card. It almost feels like a pay-per-view without it being a pay-per-view, doesn't it?
This feels like a more important Dynamite than, say, the name Dynamites that we were talking about last time, than the Friar Fest and the Quake on the Lakers stuff. This actually feels like, no, this is a thing.
Yeah.
And it's clearly, it'd be interesting to see how tournament fatigued we are by the end of it.
Yeah.
So, I'll do it the other way around. Taylor, pimp thy wares.
You can find me on Twitch at TaylorNova6. You can find me on YouTube at TaylorNova6. I do retro video games, and I'm embarking soon on an ambitious quest to play through about 40 fucking wrestling games, and also to talk about the history of the period of wrestling from about WrestleMania 1 to WrestleMania 18. So, yeah, the good stuff before we hit the copy-paste era, otherwise known as ruthless aggression. So, join me for that adventure and probably see me slowly lose my mind. As Lacey pointed out, I had missed a game and I have to go fucking find a copy of a really shitty Amiga game.
I'm here just to torment people in my own evil way.
Just remember, if you're good at something, don't do it for free.
Seven, you're here as always.
Yeah, and spend a lot of time with Lacey on here, talking music, talking comics, and you are a lovely little fucker to hang around with. I'm going to tell you that. It is a pleasurable experience chatting to you about those subject matters, and And we've said that there's probably some other new things on the horizon to come, but yeah, we're always releasing videos, or we're releasing videos very regularly, and as ever, we are very chatty on Twitter and on our Facebook. If you want to come along and join us there, we'll talk movies, wrestling, comics, music, you name it, we'll talk it.
Some annoying bitch keeps sending somebody music suggestions.
I'd like, yes, but again, yeah, I asked for it. So what more can I want than someone to actually say here's a music suggestion? But so yeah, come on down and join the fun.
And as always, ring bells, comments down there, like, subscribe, and all that other YouTube-ness. I'm too old for that.
It's look, do the YouTubey things, like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, that.
I love doing this to you because I fucking forget to do it on my own video, so fucking off.
It's why I keep him around, because I never think to do it. But
I've
normally
normally
that's
done.
why I'm the boy.
I was going to say, because I normally do the whole video, done the wrap up, done the finish, and they're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So until next time, and potentially Grand Slam. Auf Wiedersehen.